Hello, good afternoon, and welcome. Here is how to make $1 billion without really trying. As you can probably tell from my background, I am minted myself. No, this is another concept that I learned from a man called Michael Singer in his book, The Surrender Experiment, and it's been pretty revolutionary for my life, so I thought I would share it with yourself and see what you think. So Michael Singer was a man who basically never wanted to be wealthy. He was a hippie. He was about 24 years old. He was a hippie. He was very dedicated to his meditation and his yoga techniques. And so he had 35 grand in his bank from his inheritance from his gran who died or something like this. He bought a piece of land in the forest. He built a cabin. And he decided he was going to spend the rest of his life dedicating himself to yoga and to meditation in order to reach enlightenment. And the problem was, things kept happening in his life that were getting in the way of his enlightenment journey. You know, the life kept on getting in the way of him. And the difficulty that he had was that after a while, getting really annoyed that all these things were getting in the way of his spiritual path, he decided, what if the things that are coming to me from life are the path? They're not in the way of the path towards spiritual enlightenment. They are literally the path to get me, beyond myself, to reach a new level of consciousness. So he decided to do an experiment where every single thing that came to him from life, he decided to surrender to completely and to put his heart and soul into, regardless of how much his mind was telling him they didn't actually want to do this thing. And for example, to give you a few examples from his life, he went away for the summer and he came back and there was some lassie living in a tent on his land. And he was like, what the fuck are you doing here? This is my land. But he thought, okay, the universe has put her here for some reason. I'm just going to let her live here in a tent. And then he fucked off the next summer and he came back and she was building a house on his land without permission. And he thought, what the fuck are you doing? Who does that? And yet he was like, right, this is the universe for whatever reason. I just need to let it happen. And that woman ended up leaving for a summer, and another woman, her friend, moved into her house, and her and Michael, ended up hitting it off, and that ended up being his first wife in his life. So that was one example. Another example was he built his house by hand with a few friends, and then someone else came up to him and they were like, oh, I love how well you constructed this house. Can you build me a house? And he built another house, and then he built another house, and he ended up building this or creating this very successful construction company, never once trying to actually build a construction company. But the craziest of all was when he when PCs first came out and he went into the Radio Shack, which I guess is one of the PC stores in the US, I'm not sure, and he touched a computer and in that instant he felt this electric connection, like this kind of, ooh, this feels right when he touched the computer. So he bought one, he took it home. There was no books on programming, but he taught himself to program. And then because he knew how to program, there was some local company that asked him if he would build him a little program. And so he built one, and he did it really well. And then they gave it to their superiors or something. It went more regional, and then he ended up building this fucking software company that was worth, I think he sold for like 4 billion quid without ever, caring, supposedly, as he says, about making money, about manifesting wealth. Literally all he wanted to do was to live in the forest and meditate alone, but by, just surrendering to the things that life kept on presenting to him, not thinking about whether he wanted to do it or not, just recognizing that there was perhaps a higher power that was dictating the things, or could see, a greater picture in life, and could see that what he needed more than he could from his limited state of consciousness, surrendering to that, and just, allowing, putting his heart and soul into it. He ended up getting everything that everyone wants, famous, became a spiritual guru, he wrote all these books that were super famous, he made all the money, he lived in a beautiful location without actually ever trying. And when I first heard about this, or when I first read this book, it just struck such a chord with me, because it is the complete opposite of what everyone else does. Everyone else, tries really hard to get all the things. Everyone else, grinds and works 16 hours a day and forces and pushes and tries to manifest wealth. And he literally didn't give a fuck. And he got all the things. Now, of course, you can take it with a pinch of salt. It's a book that he's written. Who knows? But I believe him. I think there's truth in the words that he says. And so it was very liberating for me to discover this the first time, because it was freed me from the burden of needing to worry about every single thing of how everything's going to happen, and like how every step on the journey, and this is going to link to that, and then I'll make this amount of money, and then I'll invest in this, and then I'll do this, and then, you know what I mean, this, all this like stress and tension of, is it actually going to happen? And Michael Singer, just put forward this thing saying, you know, trust that it's all going to work out for you. Surrender to the flow of life. Stop trying to like use your mind from the limited state of consciousness you have right now to try and figure out where you're going to be in 5 years. Think about where, you know, the ideas, the dreams, the thoughts you had a year ago, or 5 years ago, or 10 years ago. It's completely different from the person you are now. You would have no idea, you know, what you actually needed, or what the things that were actually best for you now if you were looking back at it then. So just trust that and surrender to the things that present themselves to you, and do a fucking good job, and pour your heart and soul into everything that you do. Give 100% to everything you do, because what else, if you're doing it, you might as well do it well. Now, this is easier said than done, and there's a few challenges, right? I'm not saying that this is the easiest philosophy to just immediately go, hi, surrender, you know. What about, like, hey, you're on a night out and somebody spikes your drink, they're like, let's go back to my flat, and you're like, yes, I surrender. Obviously, it's something that you need to work out for yourself, and I've been trying to figure this out for the last kind of 6 months or so. But there's a few kind of assumptions that you need to accept if you're going to do this. One of them is that there's perhaps, you know, a more intelligent force than yourself that's dictating things, powers that be, and if you just, you know, allow that to take over and wait for things to present themselves to you, then everything's going to work out well. That's perhaps a difficult concept for some people to accept, but I've had experiences in my life that have led me to believe that that's what happens, so I'm okay with that one. The other one, I guess, is that, you know, it's all good. You don't need to worry about things. It's all going to work out. You're going to get the money. You're going to get the success. You're going to get the life you want. If you're someone who's, you know, genuinely doing the work necessarily in yourself and in the world in order to enact this kind of change in your life and the life around you, then you can kind of relax, because it's all good. As long as you know how to, you know, listen to what the universe, what your heart is telling you what to do in every moment in your life, and you listen to that, and you do that, you do your work, and you do the homework that the universe has given you, then it's going to work out well, and you're going to end up in a life that's more perfect than you could ever have imagined, you know. Now, that doesn't mean that you say yes to everything, which is challenging, because when I first did this, I was like, I guess I'll say yes to everything, and then you end up in loads of, like, you know, things that fizzle out and things that aren't actually worth your time, and it's just so yeah, I guess I can give you an example from my own life of how this worked for me, and how I've sort of used the surrender experiment in my own life in a very practical way in the last sort of 4 months. And so I did ayahuasca in Portugal in September there, and one of the things that became very clear between the first and second, there was 2 retreats, one weekend, second weekend, and in the week between, I had to do some work for my client, this main client I had, and it just killed me. I felt this like unbelievable love and energy, and then on the Monday it was like, and I went straight back to all this stress and anxiety and just everything. It was all the negative stuff, and it was triggered by having to do this work for this client. And so it became abundantly clear to me that the work that I was doing for him was out of alignment, and it's nothing to do with him. Lovely human being, brilliant guy. He's helped me out loads, but it was not in alignment with myself. So I came back from this second retreat, and on the Sunday, you know, and on the Monday, I texted him and I said, listen, I think I'm going to quit. And he, you know, this guy, I was making lots of money with this guy, and it was easy money, and I wasn't having to work that much, and like, you know, it was maybe 4 hours a day, and all my stuff was covered, and logically it didn't make any sense at all to get rid of this client. But I just knew that I had to. And so when I said to him I quit, he was like, let's jump on a call. And he hit me with like an attack energetically. He was like, oh bro, you're making a mistake, and I'll give you 3% equity, and we're in startup mode, and in 2 years you could have 5 million in the bank, and this and this and this and this and this is an exit play, and you could be sorted for the rest of your life. Imagine what you could do with millions, and all this kind of stuff. And so it rattled me. It took me from like where I was when I was surrendering, which was your heart and your gut brain, took me back up to my mind, my logical brain of like, is this the right idea? Maybe he's right. No. And then I decided to smoke a cigar with the intention of, right, during this cigar I'm going to make an actual decision of what I'm going to do long term. And so I sat out there and puffed the cigar, and halfway through I thought, get him to fuck. So I texted him straight away, and I was like, no, we're done. So I went from, you know, making significant amount of money, more money I've ever made in my life, to in an instant making zero. And this was an example of surrendering, because I got the message that I needed to get rid of him from the universe, it felt. And I was like, okay, let's give this a bash. Let's surrender to this message and hope that it works out for the best. So I went from making lots of money to zero money. And naturally, as always happens when you first make a fair bit of money, you save fuck all. Although I did have some crypto. So in the last 3 months, I went from, having built my career for the last 3 years, very cushy situation with the mentor, loads of money coming in the bank, could kind of do whatever I wanted. I was, on this path that I'd wanted from my entire life, which was to make money online and live on the laptop, make good money and live whatever I wanted, to then just going poof and having nothing external. I had the money, I went to zero. I had some savings, but I started burning through it instantly. Don't have a bird, and also my physical health wasn't great. And then I came to Colombia because my shaman had invited me to come live in the jungle with him for 6 weeks. And 2 days into Colombia, the shaman texts me and he's like, "Oh, we're not even going to the jungle anymore." So I was like, what the fuck am I even doing in Colombia? But throughout this entire process, I just sort of trusted, okay, there's a reason that I, was meant to do this. There's a reason that I had to quit this client. There's a reason that I came to Colombia. There's a reason that I was told to do all these things in my life, even though it's difficult in the short term. And to be honest, the main thing was that what I learned throughout this entire 3-month period was that I feel happier, more confident, more joyous. I have more momentum in all the things that I wanted to do in my life. I feel more driven towards where I want to go in the future than I ever have. And I don't have anything, or I didn't have anything external to point to that I could say, look, it's working. And yet internally I felt phenomenal. I was, I could feel the survival stress of the money worries coming back into my life for the first time in about 2 years, having to think about money again. And I managed to keep that, in the distance and just let it wash by. And even though I was running out of money a belter, although I did have some crypto that I didn't want to cash out, even though I was running out of money a belter, I was like, no, I'm just going to trust that this is all good. I'm going to surrender to the process, and I trust that it's all good, and I know that it's all going to work out, And in the last couple of weeks, everything's fallen into place. I managed to get the perfect, location in Colombia. As you can see, it's fucking beautiful. And, I've got a nice gaff, a nice background where I can do the YouTube videos. A client I was working with before reached out and they wanted to do some more work with me, and that sorts me out financially in the short term. I launched this marketing funnel and I made some money online on offer for the first time ever. So just all the things kind of clicked into place finally after 3 months of really being tested of okay, this is what surrender means. So here it is in your life, surrender to it and see if it works out. And now I'm on the other side of it and I can tell you that it has. So all I'll say is that give the old surrender experiment a bash. It's worth a read, by the way, if you're interested. But maybe it's an idea to consider just, letting life dictate your next step in your life and putting yourself wholeheartedly into whatever that is, even if logically it doesn't make sense. And even if your mind's telling you, no, I don't want to. If this is what's clearly the next step and what you have to do, then give it a bash. And you never know, it might work out better than you could ever have hoped. Cheers.